Welcome in, Geico OutKick Studios. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. Tuesday edition, OutKick the coverage. Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do. Fortunately, Geico makes it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. It's a good thing, too, because having a home is hard work. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. Geico.com, easy. And it certainly is easy as we roll through this program to break down the biggest story of the day. And beyond a shadow of a doubt, it is this: the 72 Dolphins popping the champagne. The 11-0 Pittsburgh Steelers go down to a team without a mascot. The Washington football team rolls into Pittsburgh and takes down the Steelers. Now, this is why I have been saying for a long time, nobody is afraid of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are a good, not great team. They have trouble running the football. They're coming off now a serious injury to Bud Dupree. They have won or played in 6 of their 12 games. The game has been decided by 7 points or less. So they have flirted with fire over time several times here. And finally, they got burned. And as a result, if you break this down, the bigger story here, to me, is that the Steelers can't be considered on the same level as the Kansas City Chiefs because ultimately there are a lot of teams that can win games against them. Now, could the Steelers go to the Super Bowl? Yes, certainly they could. Could the Steelers find themselves in a position where they are in the AFC Championship and they're playing against the Chiefs and late in that game they find a way to win? Yes, it could happen. But if I had to bet right now, and I've been saying this for a while, the Chiefs are, to me, a prohibitive favorite in the AFC because of exactly what we saw yesterday from the Steelers. Now, also, a lot of you didn't even get to see it, and this had me fired up. You might have seen a tweet that I dashed off during this game. I didn't have it. I didn't get to watch the Steeler game against Washington, which turned into one of the most interesting games of the year, because it wasn't on in my viewing area. And I know some of you out there have DirecTV and you have the NFL Sunday Ticket and all of those things, but I don't understand how the NFL made the decision on a COVID rescheduled game. To me, all of those games should be available for the entire nation to watch. So this game kicked off at 5 o'clock Eastern. They should have been able to watch it anywhere in the country. Where I live, you weren't able to watch it. I know some of you were able to watch it. Some of you were not. So I felt like I was going back in time. I was watching this. Well, it wouldn't have been that far back in time because I was watching the score on my phone. But I know some of you are going to be like, well, if you just streamed it at, the Reddit, there's all sorts of ways that you can illegally stream games. I understand that it would have been possible to go find it. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm old school. I want to sit down in front of my television and I want to pull out one remote control and I want the game to be on, right? And I feel that way about all these streaming devices and everything else. And I feel like the vast majority of you are with me. Our television's gotten so complicated now. We don't thankfully have like 15 remotes like some people do, but I can't even figure out how to do anything, right? We got Netflix. I think we got HBO Max, Amazon Prime, I want the bundle back, right? I want to be able to sit down and I want to be able to easily find whatever I want to watch on television. Like the other day, my 6-year-old was like, "Hey, I want to watch Christmas Chronicles on Netflix," and I was like, "I don't know how to get into Netflix. I don't remember my passwords. I don't remember, how to type it in slowly on a remote control. Like, it's miserable, right? And I can't be the only person." And I feel like such an old man saying this, but I want every game on my television. And this maybe is what's going to save the cable industry, is old, dumb people like me who just want to be able to sit down in front of our televisions and put a game on. Like, I didn't have any trouble finding the Bills game going up against the 49ers. It's on Monday Night Football. I know exactly where to go, and they're even making it easy on me now because I have that. Full disclosure, I don't get paid anything, although I probably should, to have cable or satellite or whatever else. I have got cable in my house. So they have these new Xfinity voice control remotes. and I can sit down and I can just say exactly what I want to watch. And it'll typically pop up as long as they can understand what I'm saying. And it's fabulous. I love it. All right. Now, in my house down in Florida, we've got DirecTV. And so that's a little bit more complicated, but I can work that too. But what I want is something, and Dub, you may be the person who can talk about this because you're the youngest person on the show. I want something that just automatically syncs everything, that once I log into it, I don't have to remember any other passwords. Because I'll tell you this, probably listening right now, Scott Shapiro, our boss, I have to do these tutorials on as an iHeartRadio employee, on all these different subjects, and I can never figure out how to get logged back in to the overall computer system, right? Like, I don't know. I can't remember my password. I can't inevitably, I end up on the phone with the tech team because my password's expired, or I can't remember if there's an exclamation point in it or whatever else. I don't know. I am okay. I will allow my face to be my password for everything. So I got to give iPhone credit on that because, my FanDuel app, I can hold it up to my face and it recognizes me, and I don't have to remember any passwords. I don't have to worry about anything like that. Fingerprint, whatever they want, as long as I don't have to remember a password. Because inevitably, if you're anything like me, you have a password and then you have a question mark, or you have an exclamation mark or a period or an uppercase or a lowercase, and there's all these different requirements in order to be able to get anything. So I'm fired up about this. As much as I was interested in watching the Steeler game against the Washington football team, I couldn't even watch it because I couldn't figure out how to watch it. And I don't want to go on these streaming sites. Some of you guys will be like, hey, get on Reddit. You can illegally stream it. Yeah, but then there's all these pop-ups and all these viruses and everything else. I just want to sit down and I want to be able to get in front of my television and I want to be able to watch every game. It shouldn't be hard to do. I don't understand why the NFL didn't make it simple, right? I just don't get it. Dub, did you have this game? Did you illegally stream it somewhere? Is there a way for all of the things that I subscribe to all be synced so I don't have to worry about this?
Well, I was sitting there, same boat as you. I look on my app. I see that the game's on Fox, so I have
put it on. Judge Judy was on.
I know.
Here in
I was like,
Nashville.
"Are you kidding me? I don't want to watch Judge Judy right now. This is an important game. Every game is important, especially when you have money on it." And I had to illegally stream it. I don't know how to.
How did you illegally stream it? Where did you go?
I just Googled on my phone NFL streams, and the second one popped up. I don't even know if I can say the name of the website on air. It may have been inappropriate, but
was it Reddit?
No, it wasn't Reddit. I think Reddit got all their streaming stuff shut down.
Did they kill all that? Because for a while, when I was over, I went over to London to do to watch the Titans play against the Chargers. And so my kids, who are all more technologically sophisticated than me, they were like, Dad, you can just go to Reddit and you can watch, because we were overseas and I couldn't get the games on in England, and I didn't want to try to run around and find some pub that had the NFL Sunday ticket and everything else. So they were like, Dad, you can just go to Reddit. And so I watched all the NFL games. I streamed them from England, on my Wi-Fi devices there. But so you found it with no trouble just by going on Google and typing in the game?
Yeah, now the trouble may come later on in the next few weeks when I have some weird virus on my phone and computer, but until then,
but it worked perfectly fine for you.
Yeah, it was pretty much.
But are you with me that this game should have just been on normal television?
I don't understand why it wouldn't be. I know there was something with DirecTV and the Sunday ticket customers, and 40% or fewer of the markets had to have the game televised. But I mean, who cares? Just air the game nationally. I don't think anyone that has purchased Sunday ticket is really going to cause an uproar about that.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I've been anti-Sunday ticket for a while, not because I dislike the overall offering. In fact, I really do like it. I like the idea that you should be able to watch every game, but I don't think it should be exclusive on only DirecTV customers, right? I want to be able to buy that as a Comcast customer, and I'm sure there are tons of people out there that want to be able to buy it otherwise as well. And I understand that DirecTV actually wants out of that deal because they're paying so much for it, and I think it hasn't been popular enough for them to make money in the grand scheme of things. Because if you think about the DirecTV deal, I've been on this bandwagon for a long time. I think that the NFL games need to be televised like it's the NCAA tournament. And what I mean by that is, and I'm going to keep beating this drum until somehow it ends up happening, either give me the opportunity to buy everything relatively easy, or what I've been arguing for a long time. Do you remember, like, if you're old enough, and I'm sure there are some of you out there, and by the way, I sound like I'm 75. I'm 41 years old, so I'm not that old. But I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who remember when the NCAA tournament was on, it used to just be on CBS. And so for the early games, you might be a fan of a team that's not in your region, and so you would have to go out to a sports bar in order to watch the NCAA tournament games. Now, it was always a little bit controversial, but they would sometimes have blowouts, and they would finally decide, hey, we're going to shift off this game and go somewhere else, right, and make moves like that. But in the grand scheme of things, it was so frustrating to have to go out to a sports bar, worry about whether you're going to be able to hear the game. And that's how, by the way, a lot of people watch NFL games now because of Sunday Ticket. But something interesting happened. When they gave everybody the ability to watch as many games as they wanted to and pick their own game, and you end up with that joke. Hopefully we'll be able to make it again in March. I've never missed a joke more, where everybody's like, what channel's True TV? What's True TV? Well, I'll be glad to make that joke, and I bet you guys will too if you have the NCAA tournament to be able to watch. But True TV, TBS, Turner, and CBS, they have up to 4 games going on simultaneously now. And what they found out was if you give the consumer the ability to choose what he or she watches, then they watch more, right? Because you might be watching a game on CBS back in the day that stunk, and if you have the scoreboard up in the corner like they do, well, there's another game going on that's better. You can flip over and watch that one instead. And so I got to give a lot of credit, I think, to the people at CBS and Turner who came up with the idea, hey, the best thing we do in the NCAA on Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday, the opening weekend of the tournament, when we go from 64 teams down to 16, is we allow everybody to watch it on television, make their picks about what games they want to watch. And so that ended up exploding the overall audience. And I watch NFL Red Zone now a lot, right, because I have Comcast at my house and I don't have the NFL Sunday Ticket, which I like the NFL Red Zone. But what I would prefer over that by far is that I'm able to flip around like I can for college football and watch whatever game I want and or watch 3 or 4 games at once with my different streaming devices set up and everything else. And by the way, some of you out there are going to say, well, Clay, why don't you have a streaming package? And the answer is, and Dub, I bet you've dealt with this, because it's like a minute behind. If I'm gambling on a game in real time, I want to be able to watch the game in real time. And some of these streaming companies, they don't provide you with that opportunity. They actually end up like being like a minute behind. And if you're texting with your buddies, or if you're following on social media, or if you're gambling, do you know what have you noticed this, Dub, that the streaming is often way behind?
Oh, way behind. More than a minute, I'd say. Absolutely. Like, yeah, you're right about text. I'll get text that'll just completely spoil the game.
That's right. Because if you're not watching it on, this up-to-date manner, then it's kind of difficult to see what exactly is going to end up happening. So the reason why I bring all of this up as a big issue is because it directly tied into the Steelers going up against the Washington football team in what should have been a really interesting game for so many people to watch and be able to get their own opinion about what was happening. I was sitting hitting refresh on my phone down the stretch to see what was going to happen. Now, I've seen all the highlights by now, but I can't remember the last time there was a big game on and I couldn't see any of it or didn't have any clue at all what was actually taking place from one moment to the next, right? So I think the NFL desperately needs to get this thing fixed up and make sure that going forward, they are not going to end up in this situation or this scenario anymore. All of that is kind of a digression in the larger context, which is we talked about yesterday on the show. I started off the show by saying, in my mind, there is absolutely no doubt that the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL. And all I saw on Monday, as I watched the scores, as I've watched the highlights now of the Steelers, as I've looked at the numbers, is there's absolutely no defense in my mind to any argument that in this scenario, the best team in the NFL isn't the Chiefs. And I think the Chiefs had to be watching that game with the Steelers, kind of laughing a little bit to themselves and saying we would take this team and we would beat them pretty soundly. And for those of you who think I'm overreacting, did you watch the Steeler performance against the Ravens and RG3 even without Lamar Jackson there? I mean, that was not a good performance on Wednesday. Mike Tomlin said we sucked. And then they had several days to get over that performance. They got to stay in Pittsburgh and get ready for the next game. And they came out and they pretty much stunk against the Washington football team. That wasn't in any way an aberrational result. What do I mean by that? Sometimes games happen in the NFL where you're like, oh, there was a punt return. Well, there were 4 interceptions. Well, there were a couple of crazy fumbles. And the score doesn't reflect what actually happened in the game. This is basically the team that the Steelers are. They have trouble running the football. They have major issues as you break down in terms of their ability to kind of get going. Like, here are the stats in that game. Almost identical yardage totals, right? Nothing crazy there. 18 first downs for Washington, 17 for the Steelers. Both teams were mediocre at best on third down. Neither team got a fourth down efficiency, got a fourth down. Both teams ran about the same number of plays, nearly identical time of possession, and neither team could really run the ball very well. But the Steelers ran the ball for just an awful performance, right? The Steelers threw the ball 53 times, which I think with Ben Roethlisberger, I know a lot of that's short passing, but you have to be a little bit nervous about it. And they only averaged 5.8 yards per pass, which means that the Washington football team kept them everything in front of them other than the one big play the Steelers hit. And they couldn't run the football. They ran the ball 14 times for 21 rushing yards. And ultimately, I think that is fundamentally the opposite of what we think of when we think of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Defensive strength, pound the ball with a big physical running back, let the offensive line lean on the defensive line. That's not what the Steelers are. They are a decent defensive team that can use the short passing game when Roethlisberger is on to move the ball fairly well, depending on who they're playing against. But I feel like every game they play in the playoffs is going to be very similar to what we've seen for most of the season, which is games that are going to come down to the wire in the fourth quarter. And so that's what we saw. And finally, there was a result where they didn't get the benefit of the doubt down the stretch. And the Steelers go down. The 72 Dolphins are celebrating. And we got a lot of football to be played here in the final 4 weeks of the season. But all this did was confirm my belief that the Chiefs are going to be the best team in the NFL. Now, a lot of people wondering who's going to be the number 1 seed. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more as the show progresses. But the Steelers are still the 1 seed because their loss came against the NFC and the Chiefs' loss came against the Raiders. So the Steelers still have the better record right now. So even though both teams are 11-1, the Steelers have the tiebreak to allow them to still be the number 1 seed. Although, and I've been saying this a lot, I don't really think where you're going to be playing matters as much as it might have mattered in past years, because without full stadiums, without massive amounts of crowd present, it's not as big of a deal as it might have been before.